everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of the Dorton and Doetkott Debate Podcast. I am Lucas Dorton. I am joined by Nicholas Doetkott. Nick, you're not wearing the headband. This is 2 weeks in a row. I'm a little disappointed in you. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. My bad. I mean, I'm just getting so lazy in this quarantine life. I can't even put a headband on anymore. I'm just counting on my licorice. I don't have a care in the world. Next week, promise. I'll have the headband next week.
Okay. Episode 20, you got to have that on. We are joined again by Caleb Sipe. He joined us last week to do our mock draft episode. And as he throws back a White Claw, no lies when you're drinking claws. Oh, that's not a White Claw. Sorry, I can't quite see there.
It's some honey.
The screen is cut in half, so I can only see you drinking something. That is honey. So we're sponsored by Honey and White Claw. He's got his White Claw there. But anyways, Caleb, again, thank you for joining us. Hope we have another good episode with you. You always provide phenomenal insight.
I hope I don't fail you.
Caleb, you can never fail me. You can never fail me.
All right. Appreciate that.
So we are going right into it here. We're going to go through the whole first round. And then kind of highlight some picks later on in the draft and go through winners and losers of the draft at the end of the show there too. Caleb's got a little jig going on. He's ready to go.
You want to know why I have a jig going on?
Why is that?
The University of Minnesota officially had more draft selections than the University of Oklahoma.
Right? That's big time.
And Oregon and Wisconsin and Texas and UCLA and some others. But
light flex.
The University of Minnesota, we're here to stay. PJ Fleck is building a dynasty, and see you in the national championship in a few years.
Can't wait. Hopefully Florida's meeting you there. But anyways, we will get right into it here with the first overall pick. Cincinnati Bengals go with Joe Burrow. Early on with these picks, I'm not sure how much insight we'll put in just because a lot of this is kind of what we expected, so not too much of surprises here. Joe Burrow going number one overall. I will say it was a little concerning that they took so long to make the number one overall pick. I mean, they've been on the clock for, feels like 5 years now, but they take almost the entire 10 minutes to pick Joe Burrow. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I don't really have any more besides that.
I don't know. It seems like that happens every year. I don't know why, but I knew the whole time they were taking Burrow. I knew they weren't trading it or taking somebody else. I know people begin to wonder, but I've been there, done that. I've seen it happen many times before. I have no idea why it takes so long, but they do. At the end of the day, they took the guy they should have taken.
See, back in my day, we had contracts arranged with the first overall player before the draft even happened. Like Jake Long, offensive tackle for Michigan, I believe it was 2007. I think they already had the contract agreed upon with the Dolphins before the draft even happened. Same with like Mario Williams and the Texans. Like some of these guys, like it used to be that you knew who you were taking and you didn't make a big deal about it. You were just like, yep, this is our guy. We're taking him. Now it's like, well, we're going to psych everybody out, make them think maybe Joe Burrow is going to sit there at 2. Nobody's going to buy that. It's all just smoke screens. Miami's going to take Tua. Stop with the smoke screens.
Yeah.
I saw reports that maybe if Isaiah Simmons was sitting there at number 6, the Chargers were going to take Isaiah Simmons instead of Justin Herbert. Like, shut up. We know who you're taking. Yeah. Stop with the just shoot straight with me. Just tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. But anyways, we can move on from that. Number 2 overall, Washington Redskins go with Chase Young. No surprise here again. This is kind of what was expected. Caleb, I'll start with you on this. Do you think Chase Young at the end of the season is your defensive rookie of the year? Or do you think somebody else gets that award?
Seeing as the defensive rookie of the year award is completely stats based, it doesn't go to the actual best defender. I would say Derek Brown is not in the running. I would say it'll be a 2-horse race between Isaiah Simmons and Chase Young. Seeing as the NFC East is much worse than the NFC West, I think Chase Young will have a chance to put up a lot of sacks. I think Simmons should get some picks and sacks and tackles. But looking at it, I think Chase Young is going to be your front runner just because he has to play against the NFC East for 6 games out of the season, and that always helps your stats if you're any good.
Nick, what do you?
I do think Chase Young will get it. It's mainly just being the fact that he is a defensive end, and if you look at defensive awards, it normally goes to a defensive end just simply because they rack up the stats, the sacks. Sorry, and plus, I mean, everything they say about the guy is he's a stud. So I think it will be him. I mean, Simmons will be in the running. There's always a surprise guy in the running, but I think it'll be Chase Young, and I like the pick.
Pick number 3, Detroit Lions were on the board. Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State. Again, top 3 were pretty locked where they were going to go. No surprise here again. They go with Jeff Okudah. Caleb, do you see any downfalls potentially in his game, or do you think this was a solid pick for Detroit?
I mean, he's a guy. He's got the size. He's got the strength. He's got the speed. It's Ohio State, so I'm not too concerned about the fact that he didn't start a whole lot until like his senior year. The only knock, if I had to like pick on one thing as a knock, it's that he only had 3 interceptions his whole time. And so he wasn't able to finish the play with the ball in his hands, but he did get some pass breakups. So, and you just also don't throw to the dominant corner. But apparently they had 2 first-round corners, apparently. We'll get to that later. So I think if I had to pick on one thing, it would be the lack of interceptions. But not everyone's a ball-hawking corner. I think he'll be a shutdown corner for them. I think it's a great pick for Detroit, and it makes sense, and everybody knew it.
Nick, what do you think? Kind of same thing as Caleb?
I think from everything I heard, Jeff Okudah was far and away the number 1 cornerback in the draft. And they just lost Darius Slay, and they obviously have needs all over the place. And I think defense is what they had to address. And after D lineman, I think cornerback is the most important spot on the defense. So Jeff Okudah clearly made sense here. And it seemed like just about everybody had in there, except I seen Mel Kiper's final one did not have Okudah to the Lions, which I don't quite understand why. But
who did he have?
I like the pick. He had, to be honest, I don't remember who he had. But he had Okudah going to the Jaguars at 9. Somebody else at 3.
Maybe Isaiah Simmons.
I honestly don't remember.
So pick number 4, the New York Giants were on the clock. Now this one were maybe some not quite sure picks were going to go in as far as the Giants go. Some people maybe thought they go defense. I know Caleb thought they were going to go Isaiah Simmons. Nick and I both thought they were going to go offensive line. They ended up going offensive line. They went with him. So Nick, I'll start with you on this one. Any surprise that Andrew Thomas was the first offensive lineman taken off the board?
I was surprised by not the position, but by the fact it was Thomas. Myself and you both had Tristan Wirfs here. I was fairly confident they were going to take O-line. I mean, I've said it before. When you have a young quarterback, a lot of times teams fill the offensive line to help them out. And honestly, besides quarterback, O-line is probably the most important spot on the team. So I would have drafted O-line as well. It's just from everything I had heard, and it seemed like Tristan Wirfs was the best lineman in the draft. And Iowa linemen, personally, have a lot of times ended up being really good and had a lot of success in the NFL. So I was a little surprised it wasn't Wirfs, and that's who I would have gone with. But considering Wirfs went 4th among O-linemen, maybe there's something that we don't know that is the reason he fell. At the end of the day, they took O-lineman. It wasn't the one I would have taken, but I agree with the position they took.
Caleb, what do you think?
It sounds like Andrew Thomas is going to be good. So.
I was somewhat surprised they didn't take Isaiah Simmons there, but if they weren't going to take Simmons, then offensive line made the most sense. I think it's really hard to grade offensive linemen. It's easy to see who's good and who's bad, but to truly like grade who is the best, that's why there are people paid a lot of money to do this, and we're not. I wish I had enough time to sit there and analyze every single snap of an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
But I don't. And so a lot of what I do is just based off of I'll watch some tape of the team. And guys like Tristan Wirfs, I got to see them in action a couple times. But really, it's going based off of size and what others are saying. And I believe Andrew Thomas was an All-American. So clearly people recognized his talent. I think it's a good pick for them. I think they might have been better off taking Isaiah Simmons, but they're one of those teams that they have so many holes that pretty much you could take anything, including quarterback, and have upgraded at the position.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously they have Daniel Jones, the guy behind center there, and the Giants certainly needed offensive line help, and I think they went with the right pick here. Don't get me wrong, I think Isaiah Simmons would have been a heck of a player for him. But I think at the end of the day, offensive line is really where it needed to be addressed, and that's where it went. Number 5, the Miami Dolphins had their first of 3 first-round picks. Again, no surprise here. They go with Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama. This was the Dolphins guy from day one. Nick even mentioned it last week. They wanted to tank for Tua, and even though they didn't get the number 1 overall pick, they still got Tua. So that just goes to show what they really believe in this guy, and they were able to get him. So I think that's pretty cool for this. And then I have a question, but I'm going to go to the Chargers pick first. The Chargers went with Justin Herbert again, their guy. That's the person they wanted to go with. Now, there was a report that came out. I can't remember off the top of my head who was the one that reported it. If it was Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, I'm not 100% sure. But somebody made the report that if everything goes as planned, that Justin Herbert will not be taking a single snap this season. So, Nick, I will start with you. If you are an NFL GM coach, are you throwing your first-round quarterback right into the fire right away, say, give me some wins, or are you letting them sit and just kind of let them learn things?
I'm throwing him in the fire 100%, absolutely, yes. If you're drafting a quarterback top 10, it's probably because you're not good. Specifically, your quarterback's not good, and you need a lot of help. And the reason the quarterback's getting drafted in the top 10 is because they're supposed to be really good. So put them in there. If they can learn on the sidelines, then they can learn on the field. If they throw a bunch of picks and go 2-14, who cares? That's what Peyton Manning did. Look what he became. If you don't put him in there, whatever quarterback you're putting in there, Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton, you're not going to win anyways. That's the reason you had this pick in the first place. So just put him in there. It makes absolutely no sense to draft a guy and then just let him sit. I don't understand it. I never will. I've always been against it. Always will be. Just throw him in there. The best way to learn is to go out there and do it yourself. Throw some picks, throw some touchdowns. You'll learn from it. And Herbert is set up better than anybody in this whole draft. If the Chargers with that roster, especially that defense, and with Eckler and Allen on offense, if they have good quarterback play, who knows? They could make a run the playoffs. If that's unlikely by a rookie, I get that, but it's also probably unlikely by Tyrod Taylor. So throw him in there. I'd be all for it.
Caleb, are you on the same path as Nick is, or do you kind of have a different opinion on that?
See, I think it's okay to let your quarterback, especially when you have a veteran like Tyrod Taylor, where you can let him sit in there for a game or two and let him, ideally, what we saw with quarterbacks in the past was that if you were able to sit for a year and learn, or like with Aaron Rodgers, sit for a few years and learn, it really helped you out a lot with the maturation of a young quarterback. And now we don't see that anymore. Now we see if you are a quarterback taken in the first round, the expectation is you are a day one starter. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. And I think what we've seen now is quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield. He sat under Tyrod Taylor for a couple of weeks before they brought him in. I'm trying to think of some other examples, but they're not popping in my head. But I know that that's sort of the way it's gone now, is instead of letting him sit for a year, you let him sit for like 2 games. And then you realize, okay, yeah, our rookie quarterback is probably better than this veteran. But you sort of let him get his toes wet. You let him feel what it's like to be playing in an NFL regular season environment. You're not throwing him into the fire immediately, but you're still giving him just a little experience before you realize we don't have the luxury anymore of letting him sit for an entire year. We have to put him out there. I think Herbert, like you mentioned, is in a very good position to win now. And I think he was the safest pick that of the three quarterbacks and taken in the top 6 picks. I think Herbert was the safest. He's got the prototypical size, and so does Burrow. Tua as well. But what he has is that he has consistently shown that he can succeed. If he had come out last year, he would have also been a top 3 quarterback taken. Whereas you have guys like Jake Browning from Washington, if he had come out his junior year, like it was rumored he might, he would have been a highly picked quarterback. He didn't. I believe he went undrafted or late rounds to the Minnesota Vikings, and now we aren't hearing anything about him. He really fell off. So to Herbert's credit, he was a top quarterback the previous year, and he still is. And so he was able to come back and solidify his status as a top quarterback. And so he's shown that over the years he can be that guy. Whereas Burrow, I mean, he had a phenomenal season last year, but that's not something he's done consistently. And so that kind of concerns me a little bit. 1 second. Got a bug on my wall to take care of.
Do some extermination here in the middle of the podcast. Hey, I'm for it. I don't want bugs flying around on my screen. Heck that. No, thank you.
All right. So now that we killed a bug on the podcast, is that the first death on podcast?
I think it might be. How does it feel to be the first for that?
It feels weird. It was like, it looked like an ant, but it was like an inch long. So who knows what that was, but moving on with my analysis of Justin Herbert, I think he was the safest pick, and because Burrow, he had that great season, but before that, he wasn't anything special. He still could be better. I think Burrow and Tua have higher ceilings, but I think Herbert, he is the most ready of those 3, and I could see Herbert being a starter for 10 years like a Phillip Rivers. That was the comparison I made during our mock draft, was that he is the next Phillip Rivers for them. Tua, I could see him also being a starter for 10 years with the Dolphins, but I could also see him having injury issues and them taking someone else in a few years. Burrow, I could see him struggling on a bad team and not being able to recapture the magic of his 2019 season with LSU. I mean, I think they'll both succeed, but there still is that question. Whereas Herbert, I don't really see many questions with him. You know what you're getting, and he's going to deliver. I don't see Herbert ever being the best quarterback in the league, but I could see him always being a top 10 guy, and that's what Phillip Rivers was, and that's what I think the Chargers saw in him, and that's what they know they're getting. If he turns into the top guy in the league for one season, I would be surprised. I think he'll always be sitting there in the top 10, maybe top 5 a few years. And if you're the Chargers, you did the analysis of it, and I think they're okay with that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's tough. I think I tend to agree a little bit with Caleb on this side, just for, I'm a Dolphins fan. We haven't won anything in a while. It's been an extremely long time. We made the playoffs like twice in the last 20 years. So, and we've gotten ruined both times. So I don't mind waiting a little bit. If Tua's not ready to go week 1, that's fine. I've waited this long. I can wait a little bit longer. I think the Chargers, I think it can make a little more sense maybe to start him right away, just because I think the roster is a little bit better. So I think he could find more success than Tua would right away, but just kind of depends on your situation and what's best for you. But anyways, moving on to the Carolina Panthers. Right here is where I thought for sure they go Isaiah Simmons. They do not. They still go defense, but defensive tackle Derek Brown from Auburn here. Nick, I'll start with you again on this one. Were you kind of shocked that the Panthers didn't go Isaiah Simmons?
I was, and I was disappointed because, you and I, we both have our first 8 picks the same. And up until this point, we were 5 for 6. and Simmons still on the board, I was pretty sure it was going to be Simmons. This team, this is the classic best player available, I would have thought. I mean, they have needs everywhere. Everywhere. And Simmons still being left, I would have thought he was the definite pick. I think just about everything I looked at said Simmons is better than Brown. Simmons is versatile and, in my opinion, plays a much, much more important position than Derek Brown. I thought for sure this was going to be Simmons. I thought for sure. So I was surprised. It's not that it's a bad pick. I mean, Derek Brown's supposed to be a really good player. I personally would have done Simmons, though.
Caleb, what do you think?
See, I got this pick right, and at this point in the draft, I was 6 of 7. I think Derek Brown is a perfect fit there, but also it's the Panthers. They were rebuilding. It's just Derek Brown felt like the guy that when the rule restoration began, that it just felt like the right pick for them. You solidify the interior of that defensive line, and Brown, I think he could, in my opinion, Brown will be the best rookie defender this year. I don't think he'll win the Rookie of the Year award because Brown is a very stereotypical nose tackle. He'll stuff the run, and he will clog up the middle. And that is a very good piece to build around. And that's not always the piece you think to build around. Usually you think like middle linebacker is the captain of your defense. That's what you want to build around. And that would have made a lot of sense for the Panthers since they lost Luke Kuechly. But the middle linebackers in this draft, the true middle linebackers in this draft, were all projected to go later in the first round. And it would be a huge reach for you to take a Kenneth Murray or a Patrick Queen at number 7. So it makes sense to me that you take a guy who can solidify the front line of your defense and taking Derek Brown. And aside from Minnesota, he did a great job this season. Minnesota ran all over him without starting offensive lineman Daniel Falele. I mean, that was a very proud moment as a Gopher alumni watching them destroy this elite SEC defense.
Yes.
That was the narrative we heard all game, and how Derek Brown was good and how this was a business trip for them. And they weren't playing around like they claimed they were against UCF, which they weren't playing around against UCF. They just had to come up with an excuse to lose to a group of 5 team. But Derek Brown there, bowl game outstanding. Derek Brown was an outstanding defensive tackle and is probably, you could make an argument for like Ed Oliver last year.
Yeah.
But Derek Brown and Ed Oliver are 2 of the best interior defensive linemen I've seen in the draft for a little while. And so I think that is perfect for the rule restoration.
I think the only reason I didn't have Brown going here is because I had Isaiah Simmons going here. So then I had Brown going a few spots later. But I agree 100%. I mean, the pick does make sense. I personally, again, probably would have gone Isaiah Simmons. But the fact that they didn't, you're not going to regret picking Derek Brown. Simmons may have the better career, but Brown's an extremely solid player. And, I think having success in the secondary starts up front on the defensive line. And I think it's Derek Brown is a huge reason for that. So we'll have to see how that turns out. Cardinals, go Isaiah Simmons here. Now, Caleb, I will start with you. We talked about last week how do you draft position of need or do you draft best available? It was pretty obvious the position of need for the Cardinals was offensive line. They went with best available, which was Isaiah Simmons. How do you feel about this pick for Arizona?
I mean, I think they got the best or second best player in the draft. But yeah, I had them taking Mekhi Becton, who went a little later. We'll get to him when we get to him. I saw them going offensive line. I did not see them going linebacker because they have Hassan Reddick, Chandler Jones, and they just recently picked up Devondre Campbell, former University of Minnesota linebacker, started for the Falcons. I thought they were set at linebacker. I'm not too familiar with the defensive scheme that the Cardinals run, but I would imagine they're going to be running 4 linebackers or maybe moving Chandler Jones back to defensive end where he was at one point in his career. This is really a case where I would personally say you go with best player at a position of need because the best player available doesn't fit a need. You're already set at that position, or you're already good at that position. I would have gone offensive line. I love Isaiah Simmons. I just don't like the pick. I think offensive line is what they should have gone.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Isaiah Simmons will be great for that defense. I think he'll rack up stats. They'll be able to use him as a safety, as a linebacker, as an edge rusher. I mean, this truly was a guy that if he had just picked one position to play, he could have been drafted at 3 different positions. He could have been drafted as a safety. He's got the range of a safety. He could have been drafted as a linebacker. He's got the size and the tackling skills of a linebacker. He could have even been drafted, maybe not first round, but like second round, as an edge rusher. This guy has edge rusher size, and that's what I think separated him from everyone else. This was a guy with the body of an edge rusher, the tackling skills of a linebacker, and the coverage skills of a safety. And so I think Arizona got a great guy. I don't think it's the guy they should have taken, but I can't fault them for taking him.
Nick, what do you think? Are you kind of on that same line where maybe Cardinals should have gone offensive line, or do you like to take the best available at that point, which is Isaiah Simmons?
I mean, typically going best player available isn't. It's not a mistake necessarily. You're never going to necessarily make a bad pick going best player available. And a lot of times in the top 10, that's the time where I would encourage best player available because if you're in the top 10, it means you probably have a lot of needs. However, Arizona, in this case, I definitely would have taken O-lineman. I mean, we've talked about how good Simmons is, but considering you have 3 really good O-linemen left, Wills Jr., Jackson, Becton, Wirfs is left. I mean, you got all sorts of guys left. And considering you got, again, a young quarterback who could definitely use some help to protect him on the line, I definitely would have taken him. And honestly, you can make an argument Arizona is ready to win now. I know they're picking in the top 10, but they just added DeAndre Hopkins. That's a young team that towards the end of the year started playing a lot better. I like what I see out of Murray. I really think they should have gone O-lineman here. I really do. It ends up, whereas I think they're actually one of the winners of the draft, though, because Josh Jones somehow fell to them in round 3, which addressed the O-line problem. So because they got lucky, they ended up darn near being winners of this draft. But here, not knowing Josh Jones is going to fall that far, I definitely would have taken O-lineman.
Caleb, I'll let you talk in a few seconds here because it looks like you definitely have something to say.
Oh, I do.
But
I can't even see you, Caleb, so I don't know what I don't even know what you're
making some faces at you. You can't tell he's making some faces. So, but anyways, for the Cardinals, I think this is a pick where you absolutely needed to go offensive line. Kyler Murray can run around all day, but that doesn't mean he should have to run around all day, especially if you have some time in that pocket to throw to DeAndre Hopkins. That's going to be big time. Obviously, like you mentioned, Josh Jones got picked up later, so that still is an extremely solid pick. But I think they should have gone O-line to start here. They're not going to regret picking Isaiah Simmons, but it might set them back just a tad because they didn't go offensive line first round here. So, Caleb, you have something to say here. What do you got?
Compete now with the Cardinals? You do realize that if every team kept their original pick, the next closest pick from a team in their division would have been the Rams picking at number 20. Like, they are in a very stacked division with the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks. I just don't see them being able to compete in that division. If they were in, like, the NFC East, yeah, absolutely, compete now. But just the fact that they're in that stacked division, I think it's going to take them another couple of years to rebuild. Like, the 49ers have rebuilt. The Seahawks have been very good for a while, and the Rams were just in the Super Bowl a little while ago, and they're still maintaining a very high level of performance. I think if you're the Cardinals, you've still got a couple years before you're even thinking about competing for a division title.
Nick, what do you think?
I think the NFC West is the best division in football. I don't think the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs this year, but I think they'll be competitive. But come 2 years, I think they could be very good. One, I think San Francisco is going to hit reality and take a big step back this year. Just my personal opinion. LA, yeah, they're good, but I don't know if they're ever going to regain that Super Bowl that Super Bowl team they had 2 years ago. And I think Seattle and Tampa, I think, are the teams to beat in the NFC. With that being said, Arizona's got plenty of talent now on that defense. I'm kind of contributing Simmons to that now, and then I honestly just really like what I see out of Kyler Murray. I think he could be really good. So I do think they're only 2 years away.
Fair enough.
Jaguars have the next pick here. They go C.J. Henderson, the corner from Florida. I think probably the second best corner in this draft. Pretty fair to say. This is a position that they certainly needed. The secondary, obviously, with Jalen Ramsey being gone for a little bit now, and then trading A.J. Bouye this offseason, that was definitely an emphasis that they wanted to try and get in the draft. I don't think this is certainly not going to completely fix the secondary, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Caleb, I'll start with you. Do you like C.J. Henderson to the Jags?
Oh, absolutely. Let me just check 1 second. I'm pretty sure that's what I had. Jaguars, yep, C.J. Henderson. I think that makes perfect sense for them. He's a Florida guy, went to the University of Florida. They just lost another Florida guy from the University of Central Florida in A.J. Bouye. Jalen Ramsey, what was he, Florida State?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So Florida corners seem to do well in Jacksonville. But as we all know, they shipped off Jalen Ramsey to the Rams for their Super Bowl run. And A.J. Bouye's gone. And there was some talk that they might go Jordan Love here. And that was intriguing because they did just trade away Nick Foles to the Bears, which gotta love that move for the Bears. But I was glad they didn't go with Jordan Love there because I like what they have in Gardner Minshew. I'm a believer in Minshew mania. I've got the Washington State Minshew jersey. I think them not taking a quarterback until they picked up Jake Luton from Oregon State shows that they are also bought into Gardner Minshew, at least for now. We'll see. I've seen talk that they're going to be pulling up Miami and tanking for Trevor Lawrence. We'll see if that happens. But I like that they have faith in Minshew for now, and they didn't go with Jordan Love. And addressing the defense, like this is a team that, 2017? They were in the AFC Championship game and should have been in the Super Bowl had the referees not been playing for the Patriots. Not that we've never heard that before. But this is a team that the secondary used to be a strength for them. Now it's a weakness. And so you address that by taking C.J. Henderson, who is, I agree. I'd say Okudah is the number one corner, but I'd say Henderson has the chance to be the number one corner out of this draft.
I agree. I think he's pretty polished. Obviously for Florida, I loved watching him play. Florida tends to, these last few years at least, and really for a while, it's always been a strong point of our team as our secondary has always been extremely strong. C.J. Henderson just proving that too. Nick, obviously, I believe you also had C.J. Henderson to the Jags as well too. You like this for them though, still?
I do. I think this was a very, very good pick. I had picked Henderson there. I wasn't super confident because they had 2 picks in the first round, and although I believe they should have used their first round cornerback, I wasn't sure if they would. They ended up taking clearly the second best cornerback in the draft, and by the sounds of it, after him, it was a big drop off. So to me, they had to strike with the first pick on cornerback and take Henderson, which they did. I mean, obviously, it's a position of need. They just lost Ramsey and Bouye, so I'd say it was a very good pick. And yes, Jacksonville probably should have made the Super Bowl that year because of the fumble in the Miles Jack play. But come on, New England does not get every call. It's called Tom Brady's the GOAT, and that's why they win, Caleb. Just accept it.
It's called if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Pay off the reps,
whatever.
make it to the big game.
Oh, anyways, we will move on from Patriots controversy here and get to the Browns pick. Cleveland Browns, not too much of a surprise. They go offensive line, I think, and they go with Jedrick Wills from Alabama. Solid pick. Again, with all these offensive linemen, it's kind of hard to tell. I don't think there's really one that's clearly better than another. I think it probably interchange them all in different positions here. But they go offensive line. I am intrigued to see this season. I think a lot of times in sports, a player's third season is kind of the most important one for them. Typically, a rookie year, you're going to have a decent amount of success. And then the sophomore slump happens and aren't playing as well, which is kind of how it's gone for Baker Mayfield so far. And now with them obviously getting Conklin this offseason and now getting Jedrick Wills on the offensive line, that's going to help tremendously. So I'm very excited to see how Baker does this year. Nick, I'll start with you. What do you feel about this for the Cleveland Browns?
I think it's a very good pick. I obviously had them taking Derek Brown because I thought I still had him on my board. So just being how good he was, I figured they'd take him here. But obviously he was not there. So they took offensive lineman. And honestly, I don't care who you are. If you take offensive lineman in the first round, I'm probably going to like your pick because they're very, very, very hard to find outside of the first round. And besides quarterback, they're the most important position on your team. And they clearly needed them. And as I've said many times, it probably sound like a broken record. It's just another team with a young quarterback drafting an O-lineman to help him out. And I like the pick. It's a very, very good pick. And I like the direction Cleveland's heading in. I know Baker struggled last year, but I still think he's got what it takes to be good. This could, I mean, it's obviously on Baker, but this could be a good year for Cleveland. We'll see. I like the pick.
Caleb, you feel the same?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, they picked up Conklin from Tennessee in the offseason. They already had like J.C. Treader and Joe Bitonio. So they didn't have a bad offensive line. They just didn't have a good one. And I think I had them picking up Tristan Wirfs. Taking Jedrick Wills, that's also solid. I mean, we've heard this story probably 38 times in the last 38 drafts. Offensive lineman from Alabama. That's a solid pick. I think Jedrick Wills. I'm interested if you'll start at left tackle or right tackle because I believe Conklin was the left tackle for the Titans, who were just a playoff team last year, and Conklin was a strength. So maybe you do move Wills. You put him at the right tackle position, at least as a rookie, and let him develop to the speed of the NFL game. And then maybe you switch him around as Conklin gets older and Wills starts to enter his prime. You can always flip them. Because as we know, Mayfield's a right-handed quarterback, so it's important to protect the blind side. So I think you want to put whoever is the better tackle at the left side. I think right now you probably go with Conklin, but I think you reevaluate that as the season goes on and then as the next season goes on. I see Jedrick Wills as being the left tackle of the future for that franchise, kind of replacing the hole since Joe Thomas retired. So that's a great pick for Cleveland. They clearly didn't need a wide receiver, already having one of the better duos. They didn't need a running back, already having a solid duo, and that's way too early to take a running back. And the defense isn't bad. Like, this is a team that I was kind of surprised that they weren't a playoff team. Just looking at the talent that they had, you would have thought that they would be a playoff contender. But clearly they weren't, and we'll see how that works out this year.
We'll have to see if Stefanski can turn that team around. I have a high feeling that he probably will. New York Jets have the next pick here. Personally, I thought they were going to go wide receiver. I think most of us thought they were going to go wide receiver. They ended up going with Mekhi Becton, the absolute just beast from Louisville, the absolute unit there. Caleb, I'm going to start with you on this one. Were you surprised Jets didn't go wide receiver, or you don't mind that they went with Becton?
I'm not at all surprised they went with an offensive lineman. I had them taking Andrew Thomas. We'll add this up later, but just looking at it, going through, I know one of your friends commented on the post. They were pretty sure I won. I'm looking through, and I'm pretty sure I won too. But we'll see. I don't want to get too confident. But, yeah, I was a firm believer that they were going to take an offensive lineman. I think I had Mekhi Becton going a few picks earlier to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
But Mekhi Becton on my board, I had Mekhi Becton as the top offensive tackle. I think maybe a guy like Wills or perhaps Wirfs are more NFL ready right now. Mekhi Becton playing in the ACC with Louisville, you don't have the same level of competition as a guy at Alabama or a guy in the Big Ten like Wirfs. But Mekhi Becton's size and strength, this guy looks like if he has the right coaching, we'll see if he does with New York. I'm not a firm believer in Adam Gase, and I don't follow the NFL closely enough to know who their strength and conditioning and offensive line coaches are. But if the coaching staff can coach him up right, Mekhi Becton, this guy can be a franchise left tackle. And the last time the Jets took an offensive lineman in the first round was DeBrickashaw Ferguson back in like 2004. And that worked out pretty well as DeBrickashaw Ferguson was a stud. And I think Mekhi Becton, it is definitely up there in names. But yeah, I think Mekhi Becton, that's a great pick.
Nick, you kind of feel the same thing. Do you think Jets should have went wide receiver here, or are you fine with them getting Becton?
I predicted them going wide receiver, but I'm actually totally fine with this. There was actually quite a bit of mock drafts I've seen having them take offensive linemen. I personally just thought, being that they'd get their pick at wide receiver, that they would go wide receiver to give Darnold somebody to throw to, being that they really don't have that true number one in New York. However, like I said, I sound like a broken record. It's once again a young quarterback who didn't have a very good O-line, and they're trying to help him. And like I said, it's hard to find O-linemen outside of the first round. So I'm a big fan of this pick. And Mekhi Becton, just his size alone, I think gives him a good chance of being successful in the NFL. So I like the pick. I didn't like the fact that I got the pick wrong, but I like the pick.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on that one. Caleb, you had something you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I could see where some people might think they go wide receiver, seeing as at this point in the draft they had their pick of any wide receiver they wanted. Although, like we also mentioned earlier, you want to protect that young quarterback, and that's what Mekhi Becton is. I also think they might feel like they kind of addressed the wide receiver position in the offseason. They got a couple boom or bust guys. They got some guys that when they are good, they are good. When they're bad, they are absolute garbage. And that's Rashad Perriman and Josh Doxson. They've had some decent seasons. And they've also had some decent games. I don't think they've been super reliable. But if you have two unreliable guys, you just kind of hope that one or both are on at the same time. And so I think, like we've said before, when you're a team picking in the top 10, or I guess this is number 11, you got a lot of holes. And wide receiver is something that they can address later in the draft. This was a very, very, very deep wide receiver class. So I think it makes sense to take Mekhi Becton right there.
Moving on, the Las Vegas Raiders, with their first of two first-round picks, they go with Henry Ruggs, one of the wide receivers from Alabama, which is the first wide receiver taken off the board in the 2020 draft. Nick, I'll start with you. You like this pick? Obviously, a lot of people, including Caleb, I know, kind of had compared this guy to Tyreek Hill for a good reason. He's absolutely can run fast. You think this will be a good pick when it's all said and done for him?
I personally would have gone Judy or Lamb. If it weren't for the fact that KC, who in that division has Tyreek Hill, and you can draw comparisons up to him from Ruggs, I definitely wouldn't be a huge fan of it. But at the end of the day, they need a wide receiver, so I'm a fan of the wide receiver pick. I just think it sounds like Judy and Lamb are the better receivers, and I think they're the more versatile ones and can do a little bit of everything. But Ruggs is crazy fast, and he scored a touchdown. I can't remember the percentage exactly. The percentage of times he scored a touchdown, like when he caught it, was just absurd. So yes, like Tyreek Hill. So if he pans out to be that, then of course this is going to be an amazing pick. I personally probably would have gone Judy though.
Caleb, I know Henry Ruggs was your top wide receiver that you had in the draft, and he was the first wide receiver taken. Well, I'm assuming you're pretty pleased with this pick for the Raiders.
Well, I'm pretty pleased for this because that's exactly where I predicted he would go, was the Las Vegas Raiders. I nailed this pick. Henry Ruggs III. Yeah, I'm sure that when Tyreek Hill, I don't remember the other receivers that came out. I just remember Tyreek Hill wasn't as highly regarded. People thought that guys like Lamb and Judy were going to be better than Tyreek Hill. But look how that's worked out. Tyreek Hill is an absolute beast. And there might be other guys in this draft. Like I could see Lamb or Judy being a better pure wide receiver. But Henry Ruggs III is the kind of guy that you can give it to him on a jet sweep, and he's going 40 yards for a touchdown. And nobody's touching him because they can't catch up.
Yeah.
I've been torched on Madden with the Chiefs just because of how fast Tyreek Hill is. Ruggs reminds me a lot of that, and I think Ruggs reminds the Raiders a lot of that. And I think that is ultimately what led to Henry Ruggs III being the top wide receiver picked, which is what I had. I think that's a great pick for Las Vegas. It's a very classic Al Davis move, even though, rest in peace, he's not there anymore. It's still a very traditional Raiders move, going with the super fast wide receiver, the super fast guy. And after the success we've seen with Tyreek Hill, I think Henry Ruggs III they're going to be able to use the same blueprint as was used for Tyreek Hill, and they're going to be able to use that. And Ruggs III will be a very, very good receiver for the Raiders.
I agree with Nick. I think Jerry Jeudy maybe was a better player. I actually had Henry Ruggs going to the Broncos a couple picks later. Ended up going with a wide receiver. Obviously, we'll get to that in a few picks here. But nonetheless, the Raiders are not going to regret this pick at all, especially on special teams, too. I'm assuming probably do maybe some punt and kick return for him as well, too. So it'll be exciting to see how he does for them. The next pick was supposed to be the San Francisco 49ers. They did a trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, basically swapped spots. So the Buccaneers moved up one spot, 49ers moved back one spot. The Bucs get an offensive lineman, Tristan Wirfs. I like this pick a lot. Obviously, Brady has now more protection. This guy's super athletic, potentially could have been the number one offensive lineman taken in this draft. So, Caleb, I'll start with you. You got to be pretty pleased with this pick for Tampa Bay.
I'm pretty pleased with the entire draft for Tampa Bay, but we can get to that later.
Yeah.
I like this pick for Tampa Bay. You have an okay center in Ryan Jensen. You also have Ali Marpet, who is one of the better offensive linemen in the game, who doesn't get much respect because he played for a very bad Bucs team. And then at offensive tackle, you have Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs. So now this is a very solid line to help protect Tom Brady. And that's one of the things that has helped Tom Brady just absolutely thrive during his career is you watch some of the tape on him and he can sit back there for 8 seconds and find Julian Edelman. Like, if there was more pressure on Tom Brady, who knows how his career would have gone. But just the fact that they give him so much time, that helps Tom Brady be Tom Brady and make the right throws. And so it was just kind of a no-brainer for me that the Buccaneers would go best offensive lineman available. And they went with Wirfs. I think I had them taking Jedrick Wills Jr., who was already taken by the Browns. But they went with Wirfs, and I think it just makes sense for Tampa Bay and what they're trying to do. I would not be surprised if Tampa Bay is sitting there in January still playing football.
Nick, what do you think? You got to like this pick if you're a Tampa Bay fan.
Yeah. Well, for one, you could argue that maybe the guards are even more important than the tackles in a Brady offense because it seems like his biggest weakness is pressure up the middle rather than on the ends. Regardless, offensive line in general is important, and especially your tackles. And Tristan Wirfs, I thought, was the best O-lineman in this draft. Everything I read seemed to say Wirfs, and offensive lineman from Iowa seemed to pay off. Did they have to trade up? I don't know. The fact that they did, they must have felt like they needed to. I'm not positive what they gave up to move one pick up. Anyways, I love the pick. They probably could have gone defense, address that secondary, which they ended up doing with their next pick. But there wasn't really anybody available right now that I think was good enough to outweigh the option of taking Wirfs. So I love this pick. I love their whole draft. And, yeah, you'll see Tristan Wirfs playing in the Super Bowl next year.
Okay. We'll remember that. At pick number 14, the San Francisco 49ers are on the clock here, and they go with Javon Kinlaw. An absolute beast, a guy that is going to really help out that defensive line. From everything I saw, it seems like that's kind of the place that he wanted to be in the beginning. And the fact that he went there was pretty cool for that. This guy's got super long arms, which I did not even know before the draft started. They were doing highlight tapes of him and how he was just kind of getting, not really manhandled, but he was getting beat a little bit. And all he had to do was stick out his arm and bring it down. So super strong guy, super long arms. That'll be a great pick for the 49ers. Nick, I'll start with you. You like this for San Francisco?
I do. I predicted them to get Kinlaw with the pick previous to this. Obviously, they moved down one spot. But I actually thought they'd trade, which they did. But I thought they'd trade out of the first round entirely, not just move back. Anyways, so I kind of got the trade right and Kinlaw right. But just to get to the pick itself, they just lost DeForest Buckner to the Colts. That's how they got this pick in the first place. So I think it was expected that they'd try to fill that gap. And Javon Kinlaw is one of the better defensive prospects in this entire draft. So I think the pick, obviously, it makes sense fit-wise, and it sounds like the dude's a stud, and he's from the SEC. I like the pick a lot.
Caleb, I'm assuming you feel the same thing. Again, beefing up that defensive line, that certainly isn't going to hurt you at all.
Yeah, I had them going with Jerry Jeudy. But really, the 49ers, they're coming off a Super Bowl appearance. They don't really have a lot of weaknesses, but like you mentioned, they lost the defensive lineman, so you replace him with Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw is a great prospect at defensive line. Really, if you're the 49ers, the only bad move you could have made was to take Jordan Love.
I would have loved to see that.
Really, anything you take here, it's not – they didn't have a lot of needs, and that makes sense since they were a Super Bowl team.
I would have traded it again.
Yeah, you could have traded it again. But I think if you were going to take a guy, Javon Kinlaw is the right guy to take there. I would have maybe taken Jerry Jeudy, especially since Emmanuel Sanders is now a Saint.
Yeah.
But, I have no fault to them for taking Kinlaw. I think he's a great defensive line prospect. You can play him at defensive tackle, or you can play him at the edge position. He's a very versatile defender that you can move around on that line wherever you think you need him. And that's what makes Kinlaw a good prospect for the Niners.
I personally would have traded back again. That way you could have made two separate trades with that original pick and could have got a lot of value and could have just got a bunch of wide receivers whatnot later. However, they actually traded up later, which surprised me, and took a wide receiver, which means clearly, and they could have had darn near their wide receiver of choice right here, which shows me they must really be high on Javon Kinlaw. Because if they wanted a wide receiver bad enough to trade up, well, they could have just got one with this pick, but they didn't. So they must really like Javon Kinlaw. And like I said, the dude was a beast in college. So it is a good fit for him. I personally probably would have traded back, but
Broncos pick next at 15. They were undoubtedly probably going to go wide receiver here, and they ended up going with Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver from Alabama. So another Bama wide receiver taken forward. This guy was the Blitnikoff for the best wide receiver in the nation, and it definitely showed. Obviously, Tua throwing to him certainly helps out a lot. But nonetheless, this guy's a phenomenal player, and the Broncos got a great wide receiver. Does anyone have any knocks on this guy at all?
No, I just think the Broncos made it very clear that they are not concerned about their defense. They are concerned with competing with the Chiefs and putting up a lot of points. They already had Cortland Sutton. They already had Noah Fant. They already had Philip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, and now Melvin Gordon. And then they went and added 2 wide receivers with their first 2 picks. You had Jerry Jeudy and then KJ Hamler.
Yeah.
This Broncos team, they're looking to just put up a lot of points. They probably could have made some defensive picks. And I believe they did with their 3rd round pick. They took, a corner out of Iowa. But the Broncos made it clear that how they are going to try and put themselves back into contention for the AFC West, which they haven't been since Peyton Manning retired, is they're going to try and let Drew Lock air the ball out and be a high-powered offense. We'll see if they can actually put that into action, but that's very clear that that's their intentions. And I think Jeudy, I personally would have gone with Lamb, but I can't fault them for going with Jeudy. That's a good pick for him.
Really safe pick for sure. They also went with another wide receiver, I believe, in like the 6th, 7th round, Tyree Cleveland out of Florida. So another wide receiver there. Obviously, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get with that loaded offensive room, but nonetheless, I'm sure he'll get his time anyways. But you're 100% correct, Caleb. That's the offense seems like the route they want to try and win games. We'll have to see how the defense does. Obviously, they got A.J. Bouye from Jacksonville, but I don't know. Nick, what do you think?
I don't agree with taking a wide receiver again in the 2nd. They took KJ Hamler, I believe, in the 2nd round. And I seen somebody said Drew Lock is winning this draft, which, yeah, that may be the case. And I like what I seen out of Lock last year, and he looked good towards the end of the year. And Denver played a lot better. But there's a lot of pressure on him. I mean, there's all the tools and all the pieces around him now. He's got to succeed, which, yeah, he can. And I totally understand wanting to try to compete with KC just offensively. But let's be honest. They're probably the best offense team in football, and they have Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to. And at some point, you need some defense. I like the pick of Jeudy, and I love Cortland Sutton. I'm higher on Cortland Sutton than almost anybody. But you need some – there's no point in taking another wide receiver. You already have Fant, Jeudy, and Sutton now. Why did they take wide receiver in the 2nd round? I don't get that. Take O-lineman or take – like they could have taken the O-lineman out of Boise State. I believe he was still left. I can't remember if that was before we took him or not. Or take defense. The 2nd wide receiver pick was a no-no in my opinion. I like the Jeudy pick though. It's pretty obvious they were taking wide receiver 1st round.
Oh yeah, you mentioned Ezra Cleveland, the offensive lineman out of Boise State. He wasn't taken until 22 picks after the Broncos selected KJ Hamler. Or no, 12 picks after they selected KJ Hamler. So they could have easily taken Ezra Cleveland or Josh Jones, like we mentioned earlier. Doubling down on wide receiver was peculiar, but can't fault him for taking Jeudy.
Pick number 16 at the midway point now, the Atlanta Falcons were on the clock. This was one that I don't think a lot of people really sure where they were going to go. I think they probably could have gone a number of different ways. They ended up going with A.J. Terrell there. I like this pick. Obviously, Desmond Trufant left this offseason. I believe he's signed with Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. Again, a solid pick for Atlanta. Nick, I'll start with you. It's kind of hard to be surprised by a pick that you didn't know where they were going to go in the first place. But at the end of the day, do you like where they put here?
First off, I think this is probably the hardest pick in the entire 1st round to predict. I was pretty sure it was going to be defense. I just had no idea who. I mean, you could take anybody. I mean, that defense has holes everywhere. I personally probably would have gone Clavon Chaisson. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but edge rushers have huge impact. And like you mentioned before, the best way to help a bad secondary is with edge rush. Well, I would have taken him. I mean, if I have one good spot on my entire defense, I want that to be my D-line. And this was a somewhat deep cornerback draft, so they could have got a decent somebody similar to Terrell's skill set with their 2nd pick, I think. So I would have gone Chaisson first. But, I mean, Terrell's a good pick here, and he's a defender, which they needed to go defense. I would have gone Chaisson, but I don't mind the Terrell pick. I mean, I'd give it maybe a B minus.
So
Chaisson, I would have gave an A.
So, Nick, I'm not sure you can see Caleb yet, but he is shaking his head once again. I'm not sure what he disagrees with, but Caleb, what is it that you're disagreeing with Nick? First off, let me ask you: do you like the pick for the Falcons? And then I'll address to why you're shaking your head.
I like the pick for the Falcons. I actually projected them to go corner, but I had them taking LSU's Christian Fulton. I thought he was a better corner. I don't mind taking A.J. Terrell. It fills a need. Corner was definitely a need, like you mentioned, with the loss of Desmond Trufant. They needed a corner. I think I didn't watch the Falcons too much. I don't watch losing teams in the NFL. I'd rather watch a losing college football team. But I would believe their two starting corners would be A.J. Terrell and Kendall Sheffield from Ohio State. That's solid. I mean, it could use some more work. The reason I was shaking my head is that defensive line is already decent. You have Dante Fowler Jr. and Takk McKinley as your edge rushers. I mean, you can never have too many edge rushers, but if you are sitting there picking at number 16 and you have other glaring needs, it doesn't make sense to me to take a third edge rusher. And that's what Dante Fowler and Takk McKinley are, is they're edge rushers. And they're already very solid in the middle, too, with Grady Jarrett, and then they later picked up Marlon Davidson. So defensive line, to me, I did see several mocks where Caleb on Jason was the guy going to the Falcons. It just did not make sense to me since they already had Fowler and McKinley. So, yeah, I like the A.J. Terrell pick. I was kind of confused when they went with A.J. Terrell because he was further down on my list of corners. I would have taken like a Jeff Gladney or a Christian Fulton before him, but you can't go wrong with A.J. Terrell. The guy's 6'1", 195. He played for Clemson, so he's got experience being a championship player. That's a good pick for him.
Pick number 17, Dallas Cowboys were here. I thought for sure they were going to go secondary. I thought it was going to be Xavier McKinney. I thought there's no way they weren't doing that.
I think it would have been if CeeDee Lamb didn't fall to him.
And I think you might be right. And now the Dallas Cowboys did get CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. Caleb, I'll start with you on this one. Surprised at all that the Cowboys did not go secondary? CeeDee Lamb probably was the best of people at that point, and that's who they went with. How do you feel about this for Dallas?
I do agree. CeeDee Lamb was the best available player. But when you already have Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup and Ezekiel Elliott, like, the offense didn't need more pieces. They lost Byron Jones to your Dolphins. I'm pulling up their roster right now.
I'm pretty sure Dallas had the most pass yards in football last year, darn near. You know, they had one of the best passing games in football last year.
Yeah, they were very good at passing. But what strikes me is that the needs were corner. They did address it later. Credit to them. They did get a steal with Trevon Diggs. I was kind of surprised that they got him. They did pick up Clinton Dix out of free agency from the Bears. But, yeah, I would have thought you'd go defensive back because I believe, looking at it, outside of picking up Trevon Diggs in the draft, Chidobe Awuzie is probably one of your top corners. I would think corner or maybe safety is your top need there. I mean, giving Dak another weapon and CeeDee Lamb, there is nothing wrong with that. You have it. You can't fault them for taking CeeDee Lamb, but you can question why they didn't fill a bigger need. Maybe they could have gone offensive line, especially after losing Travis Frederick. When we get to steals, I'll get to the guy that got on the offensive line in Tyler Badash, but that was a case of they took the best player available when that probably wasn't the player they should take. But I mean, in the end, Lamb's going to pan out for them. It's just, how much are they going to hurt because they didn't take a defensive back?
Nick, how do you feel about this pick for Dallas?
reaction to this pick was quite positive. I think a lot of people liked it. I don't think it's a bad pick. I mean, I'm not against it just because CeeDee Lamb probably was the best value pick right here. And, their offense is going to be absolutely loaded now. I personally think even though Lamb dropped, I would have passed up on him. I mean, you already, like as I mentioned, they had a tremendous pass game last year. Their offense was not an issue. It was the defense. And sometimes they didn't finish their offensive drives, but offense wasn't the issue. It was defense. And you just lost Byron Jones, one of the best defenders you had last year. So to me, they clearly had to go defense here. I mean, I don't even have a player in mind. I had Christian Fulton as their pick, who was left. He ended up sliding a little bit, but I just think I agree with you. I think they would have gone safety. They just didn't expect CeeDee Lamb to be here. When they seen he was here, they took the chance and went with him. I don't think I would have done that, but like I said, most people's reaction, at least national television, was it was a really good pick. And overall, I think Dallas had one of the best drafts. I personally would have passed up on CD and gotten defense here, though.
Pick number 18 is the Miami Dolphins. This is their second third-round pick. They go Austin Jackson from USC, help Tua on the offensive line. I like this pick a lot. This is actually who I predicted the Dolphins to get in this spot, so I was pretty surprised that I got that one right, just because I'd been on a pretty big slide as far as getting picks right in the first round up to that point. But Austin Jackson there. Nick, I'll start with you on this one. I'm assuming you got to like this.
Yeah, I think it was obvious Tua was going one, and then I think O-line definitely should have been addressed second, which they did do that. I had Becton left yet, so that's why I had them taking Becton and not Jackson. But I like the pick. He was probably the best O-lineman available at that point, and they clearly need O-line, so I really, really like that pick there.
Caleb, I'm assuming you got to like this as well, too, for Miami.
I do. I had them taking Josh Jones, so I don't mind them taking Austin Jackson. I think we talked about this, not on a podcast or anything, but just like probably on PlayStation. I get why they shipped off Minka Fitzpatrick to Pittsburgh, which got them this pick to land them Austin Jackson. But the Laramie Tunsil trade, I still don't like that trade. Because if you did not give up Tunsil, then Houston would still be picking at 26. Maybe Green Bay still trades up with them. But you could have got a better corner or another offensive lineman at number 18. It's just, this offensive line would have been much better with Laramie Tunsil. And so having to take Austin Jackson, I mean, it's a good pick. I just don't like the way that the organization made moves to where they had to take Austin Jackson. Like Doug, you mentioned that maybe the Cowboys should have passed on CeeDee Lamb. Well, if CeeDee Lamb was sitting right there at number 18 and the Dolphins still had Laramie Tunsil, this Dolphins team could have been very good. I think because they gave up Tunsil, and we'll get to the pick later, Jackson fills a need that they shouldn't have had, is the way I see it. And so I like the pick, but I don't think they should have had to make that pick.
Yeah, but if you're going to tank, you or start over and rebuild, you go all out. You don't get rid of one person and knock the other, like the Marlins. I don't necessarily agree that they are completely reloading and starting over, but if you're going to get rid of Stanton and Yelich, you get rid of everybody, and that's what they did. You don't go halfway. There's no guarantee Tunsil would even be there right now because he just signed an extension, or after this year, he just signed an extension with Houston. Do we know he would have wanted to sign an extension in Miami? We don't know that. Houston's got Deshaun Watson there, and I don't know about now because O'Brien and they got rid of Hopkins, but Houston typically, I'd say, has a brighter future than Miami because they got Watson. There's no guarantee Tunsil would have even stayed in Miami. I was totally fine with them trading in. If you're going to rebuild. You go all out. You get rid of everybody and anybody.
I don't think they would have needed to extended him this year. I think that was an extension to keep him there for longer. But Laramie Tunsil, he's only like 24, maybe 25 years old. Like, this is a very young guy. Um, I think the extension was to keep him there longer and make his contract better for the Texans. But I think he still would have been under contract with Miami for another year or two. I mean, this is draft, not recapping trades from a year ago. It's just the Tunsil trade still kind of, I don't like it as much. Like Minkah Fitzpatrick, he clearly wanted out. And so that good that he got where he wanted to be. The Dolphins got a pick. I just would have liked for the Dolphins to have been able to look a different direction. Or if they did go offensive line, it would be giving them a very good offensive line with 2 bookend tackles. Whereas now it's like, well, they've filled one piece on the offensive line. There's still many other needs on the offensive line.
We did, and so I guess I'll just comment on this. I see what both of you guys are saying with. I think I tend to agree a tad more with Nick just because I think we were obviously rebuilding. We were obviously going to tear down the team. So I think, what I did, do I want them to get rid of Laramie Tunsil? No, I mean, absolutely. I think if Tunsil's still on the team, that's amazing. But I think that if you are committed to rebuilding and doing this few-year process, I think you have to go with the big-name guys. Like I said, I love Tunsil. He was a great player. If he was still on the team, I'd still be happy. So I agree with you in that sense, Caleb. But I just think that we had to do something, and I think that was the one that kind of made the most sense for us to get rid of at that point. We got another pick out of it. The Dolphins did end up getting a couple more offensive linemen in the draft too.
I did like the Solomon Kinley pick. That was a good pickup for offensive guard. I think he can contribute right away. He's way later in the draft, so I don't know if we'll get around to him. I just wanted to mention him now because I think that's a good pick for them, and he should be an immediate contributor as a later pick.
And I agree 100% with you there too. So we'll have to see what happens, but nonetheless, this isn't the Miami Dolphins podcast. This is the NFL draft podcast. So we'll move on from that. Pick number 19, Raiders had their second first-round pick. They go offensive line too. They go with Damon Arnett.
That's not offensive line.
Oh, wait. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why I wrote offensive line. I actually, maybe because I was meant to put it for Austin Jackson, put it for Damon Arnett. But anyways, Damon Arnett, not the offensive lineman. Good pick for the Raiders. Again, I had them going with C.J. Henderson with their first-round pick. They ended up going Henry Ruggs. So the fact that they still helped out that secondary, I like a lot here. So, Nick, what do you think about for Las Vegas, not Oakland?
I think it was pretty obvious with 2 first-round picks. One had to be wide receiver, one was cornerback. So I wasn't surprised at all by this. But from what I had, the research I compiled, it didn't seem like Arnett was ranked as high as some of the other ones left. So I was a little surprised it was Arnett. But, I mean, he's an Ohio State cornerback, so that can't be that bad.
Caleb, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I had them taking Grant Delpit, the safety out of LSU. I agree. Damon Arnett, I hope he proves me wrong, but when I saw that name pop up, I was like, really? You still have guys like Jeff Gladney, Jalen Johnson, Trevon Diggs, who slid all the way to the 51st overall. That surprised me. But I would have taken one of those other guys, but it's a guy out of Ohio State, so I guess I'll trust Mike Mayock's judgment there. Hopefully he can be a contributor for Las Vegas. I mean, I'm not sold on the pick, but if they're sold on the pick, good for them, and I hope it pans out for them.
Obviously, like all of these picks, they're obviously NFL scouts and people that have been working in the game for a long time, and we just report about it. So hopefully they know something that we don't.
I don't think a lot of people expected Oakland's draft class to be all that great last year, and it ended up, besides Jacobs, and it ended up being one of probably the best rookie class there was. So we'll see if they prove us wrong again.
Pick number 20, Jacksonville Jaguars have another pick. They go with Caleb Von Chasen from LSU. I'm a fan of this pick again, helping out that defense. Obviously, they got CJ Henderson early on. So this is really a committed side to where they want to go. I like this pick a lot for Jacksonville, Caleb. I'm assuming you like it too.
I do like this pick, especially since they had just traded Calais Campbell to the Ravens. This pick, I believe, would have been either from Dante Fowler or Jalen Ramsey trade because it's a first-round pick from the Rams. I can't remember which one. Picking up Caleb Von Chasen, that's a great pick. It fits the need. There was also, again, talk that they might go Jordan Love here. I was very happy that they didn't. They trusted in Minshew, and they doubled down on the defense. I think Caleb Von Chasen here was a steal. I think he's a very good edge rusher, and I think this is a great pick for Jacksonville.
Nick, you got to probably agree with that too. Beefing up on that defense is going to help a lot.
I think this is one of the best picks of the whole first round. They got needs all over the place, especially defense. They already addressed their need with cornerback. So you might as well take probably the best defender left on the board here with Caleb Von Chasen. So I really like this pick. I thought it was one of the best of the first round.
Pick number 21, the Philadelphia Eagles were picking here. I think a lot of people expected them to go wide receiver, and they ended up going with Jalen Reagor. So, Nick, how do you feel about this pick for Philadelphia? You like it?
I think the Eagles had one of the worst drafts there was, at least the first two rounds. First of all, their second round pick with Jalen Hurts made absolutely no sense. That was just about as bad as the Love pick, which we'll get to. And now Reagor, obviously they need a wide receiver. I mean, I was about as confident as could possibly be that they were taking wide receiver here. But Jalen Reagor, I think there was quite a bit of other higher ranked ones here. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know. I like the position, but I think Justin Jefferson is probably the best wide receiver left on the board, according to most. So I guess I don't know. They must see something in Reagor that a lot of people didn't.
Caleb, obviously not a shock that they went wide receiver. Any shock that Reagor was a pick for them?
He had him taking safety.
Yeah. No, I had him taking Kenneth Murray.
Oh, linebacker. Sorry.
Yeah, didn't they trade for Marquise Goodwin
afterwards?
Yeah, they got a couple wide receivers. I was not sold on Jalen Reagor, especially with Justin Jefferson still being available. That Jefferson, Higgins, Pittman. I thought there were so many. Laviska Shenault.
Yeah.
Mims.
I'm not as sold on Denzel Mims, but we can get to him later. Reagor, he was one of those borderline first-round guys for me. He just didn't make sense for the Eagles for me. I don't remember who all they picked up, but they have a very crowded wide receiver room, which is very different than a very loaded wide receiver room. Whereas the Cowboys, they have a loaded wide receiver room with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. The Eagles have a crowded wide receiver room. And I believe there was a stat that NFL, on the draft they put up that was Wentz was the first quarterback to throw for X number of yards without having a receiver break 500 yards. And that really stuck out to me that, that's probably going to be the case for them again, is there is nobody on this team that is really a true wide receiver number one. Whereas if you had gone with Jefferson or Higgins or Pittman or Laviska Shenault, you could have had a guy as a true number one. Reagor strikes me as a guy who would always be the number 2 or number 3 guy. And so it didn't make sense to me. The position made sense, but the player didn't.
I agree 100% with both of you guys. It doesn't really matter what wide receiver you had next. Personally, I thought T. Higgins was better. I think that's why I had them getting. But if they would have gone Justin Jefferson, solid pick. Laviska Shenault, solid pick. Brandon Ayuk even, solid pick. But they go
I disagree, but we'll get to that.
But we'll have to see. Number 2, the Minnesota Vikings, the first of their 2 picks. So Caleb, I will start you on for the Vikings.
Yeah, 1 second. I needed to plug my phone in.
No, what is going on?
Yep, they go Justin Jefferson, wide receiver LSU here. I'm assuming you like this a lot for the Vikings. One of the winners.
I did. Yes, this was one pick that I really liked for the Vikings. I didn't know if Justin Jefferson was going to slide to them. Actually, I think we both got it right that Justin Jefferson would end up in purple and yellow still. We just had him going with their second selection. With the first selection, I had the Vikings going. Actually, looking at it, I had the first round pick right for the Vikings. I just flipped the players.
Hey, there you go.
So that's half a point for me for each one. Cool. But yeah, Justin Jefferson, I think that was a great pick for them. I'm not even going to sit here and try and make an argument for any other guy they could have taken. Justin Jefferson, 4 touchdowns in the first half of the national championship game. Like, this guy,
especially with the loss of Diggs, you needed to go wide receiver, and Jefferson probably was the best available. If you can make that for sure.
And you could have made the argument to take a corner, but I think there was, looking at it, there was only one corner taken between the Vikings' first and second pick, which we'll get to. But there weren't really many corners that I would have taken at number 22 that I wouldn't expect to still be there when the Vikings picked again at number 25, which they didn't pick at, but we'll get to that. Like, I thought Justin Jefferson, good pick for them.
Nick, how do you feel about this first of 2 first-round picks for the Vikings getting Jefferson?
Well, personally, I thought they should have gone offensive line and cornerback because this is such a deep wide receiver draft. They could have got one later. So after the first night, I was not very happy that they drafted Jefferson. It wasn't anything against Jefferson. I think the guy's going to be good. I just personally thought they should have waited on wide receiver, and I thought they should have taken Josh Jones. However, being how the draft ended up, Josh Jones, which they didn't draft, they could have drafted him later. He didn't even go till the 3rd round, so I don't know. Maybe it's good they didn't draft him in the 1st round. And they got Ezra Cleveland, who I would have rather had them, again, get Jones, but they ended up filling the O-line, addressing that need later with a guy who should be pretty decent. And they got the cornerback with their second pick. So overall, I'm actually pretty happy what they did. But at the time, I was not very happy that they took wide receiver first overall, or with their first pick. I thought they should have waited till later. But being how everything worked out, I'm okay with it.
Pick number 23 was supposed to be the New England Patriots. The LA Chargers traded back into the 1st round with that pick,
Really surprised me.
drafting Kenneth Murray. Chargers typically a team that they don't make trades in the draft, whether it's trade up, trade down. Typically are not making trades. They do here get Kenneth Murray. Absolutely love this pick. I think they're definitely one of the winners of the draft for not only getting Justin Herbert, but being able to swing Kenneth Murray as well too was huge. Nick, what did you think about this?
Honestly, I don't know what to think about this. For one, I'm surprised. I did not expect this at all. But see, I think they only ended up with like 5 total picks now, and they didn't have another one till like the 4th. So it depends how much you value those later round picks, because they're pretty much banking on just these 2 players now from this draft. But I don't know. I mean, they're clearly to me, they're in all in mode. I mean, that defense has guys all over the place. So like I said, I personally would go with Herbert right away, and if he succeeds, I mean, look out for the Chargers. But so I guess I don't know. I don't think I would have traded up to take Murray here. But with that being said, they got 2 quality 1st-round draft picks now and got a good-looking squad. So, I mean, I don't mind it.
Nick, Caleb, if you're a Chargers fan, you got to be really pleased with how they did in this 1st round. Kenneth Murray, you like them trading back to get this pick?
Yes, I had Kenneth Murray as my number 1 inside linebacker, and that's where he got taken. He got taken above Jordan Brooks and Patrick Queen. That's where I had him taken. I actually had him taken by the Eagles at 21. but so he was just a couple picks later. But I think that is a great fit. They needed a linebacker, and Kenneth Murray can be a leader of that defense. I think the guy's a tackling machine. Over 3 years as a starter, he had over 300 tackles. Like, if you can get a guy who averages over 100 tackles per season, that's great. That is just stupid good. I think his 1 year he didn't have 100 tackles. He had like 95 tackles, and that was his first year as a starter. So this guy, they are getting a solid tackler, and I think that's what the Chargers needed there.
New Orleans Saints picking next at 24 here. They go offensive line. Cesar Ruiz from Michigan. I like this pick for the Saints. Obviously, Drew Brees getting towards the end of his career. Certainly not the most mobile quarterback out there. But if you have a solid guy like this, I think some people had him picked in the first round. Certainly a first-round talent. He can make that argument, and he was picked in the first round. So, Caleb, I'll start with you here. You like this pick for New Orleans?
Yeah, I was the only one of us who had a first-round projection for him. I had him going to the Packers at number 30. He ended up going to the Saints a little earlier. Really, this Saints team is good. The question is just in the middle of the line. So at tackles, they have like Teron Armstead, Andrus Peat, and Ryan Ramczyk. At guard, they already had Larry Warford. And then at center, they're okay. But when you take Cesar Ruiz, he's a guy that you can either play him at center or you can play him at the other guard spot. That's what I liked about him when I projected him to go to the Packers. And I know the Packers fans I talked to, they were like, why would we take an interior offensive lineman? But I think they would have been happier with interior offensive linemen than what they actually did. I think he is probably the most versatile lineman that we saw taken in the first round. And if you're the Saints, you're looking at that. Like, we got a very good pick. He was actually the highest drafted interior offensive lineman in this draft. The other linemen that had been taken before him were all tackles. So I think that is a very good pick for the Saints, and it'll help protect Drew Brees. I like it.
Nick, how do you like this pick for the Saints?
I think Ruiz Jr.'s, like Caleb just mentioned, the highest ranked interior lineman in this draft. So being that you're getting a best at their position, it's not a terrible pick, but I personally thought they should have gone defense or maybe wide receiver to help out Michael Thomas, because I think Emmanuel Sanders I don't think he got much left, but I would have drafted defense here personally, like Patrick Queen, maybe a cornerback. I personally thought they should have gone defense.
49ers, so they traded this pick with the Vikings. 49ers at 25. So they essentially picked the Vikings initially would have been, but they flip-flopped places with the Vikings now picking at 31. But the 49ers going with Brandon Ayuk here. Personally, I think he could be a solid receiver. I think so could be. I'm not sure this is the receiver I would have chosen. I think I probably would have gone T. Higgins before him. Laviska Shenault probably I would have gone before him as well too. But obviously, if he was projected to go in the first round to some teams and he got picked in the first round, he's obviously solid. Like I said though, I don't know that I certainly would have gone Brandon Ayuk here. Nick, I'll start with you on this one. How do you feel about this pick for the 49ers?
I'm not a big fan. Like I said, I thought the whole time San Fran should have been trying to trade back, not trade up. I think they did need a wide receiver, but this is a draft that was littered full of them. I don't think they needed to give up a pick to take Brandon Ayuk here when they could have just waited and drafted a wide receiver later. But whatever. Guess they wanted 2 first-round picks.
Caleb, I'm assuming you feel the same as Nick and I both do with Brandon Ayuk.
Yes. Although I would like to point out that they already had the 2 first-round picks. The one they got from Minnesota, they gave up their 31st overall pick, which was already a first-round draft pick.
Yes. True. They moved up. Yes.
They just moved up in the first. They didn't move back into
honestly,
the first.
That makes it worse. They could have got Ayuk at 31.
They could have got Ayuk at, let's see, where did they pick after that? Okay, I guess they gave up their second. They could have probably got Ayuk in the second round, in my opinion. You could have traded down from 31 instead of trading up from 31, and I think you still could have got Ayuk if, like, the Bengals had wanted to jump back into the first round. Ayuk, I'm not sold on him. As a member of MSP Athletics, there were a lot of mock drafts that predicted the Vikings taking Brandon Ayuk, and I had to laugh every time that came up. I am not sold on Ayuk. I mean, the guy,
Clearly.
It's a joke. Like, that is all, like, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, KJ Hamler.
Wow. I'd love to see Brandon
Shenault.
Ayuk prove you wrong.
I hope he proves me wrong. I mean, actually, I don't really care if he proves me wrong. I don't really have any attachment to San Fran. I just like to see people succeed. I mean, but if he proves me wrong, good for him. But I think that is an absolute joke, taking Brandon Ayuk and trading up to take Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah. Did not make much sense, that's for sure.
Ayuk, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, but I think them taking you in the first was a joke.
Pick number 26, initially supposed to be the Miami Dolphins pick. They traded with the moved up to 26. And ladies and gentlemen, I think all three, and probably you listening at home, we can probably all agree that this was probably the worst pick in the entire first round. Jordan Love getting picked to the Green Bay Packers. I have a ton of opinions on him. I'll let you guys go first. Caleb, I will start with you. How do you feel about this pick for the Packers?
So I'm actually probably one of the people who is the least upset about it. Just because I grew up a Brett Favre fan. I wasn't a Packers fan. I was a Brett Favre fan. But looking at the quarterbacks that the Packers have brought in over their history, while they already had an elite starter, they were the ones who signed Kurt Warner initially, but he didn't fit in on the roster because you had Brett Favre in his peak. They also brought in Matt Hasselbeck. They also brought in Aaron Brooks, who was a Pro Bowler at one point in his career. The Packers, and then they also brought in Aaron Rodgers while Brett Favre was still near the top of the league. The Packers have had a decent history of bringing in quarterbacks and developing them. So I don't hate the move for them, but I don't think the move will impact their roster until like 2023, 2024. And if you're looking at a team that is just, it's very close to being a Super Bowl team right now. They could be a Super Bowl team right now. Jordan Love does not help that. T. Higgins would help that. Michael Pittman would help that. Laviska Shenault would help that. Even KJ Hamler would help that. There are so many guys they could take there that would help them compete right now. But trading up for a project quarterback who could be, I mean, who knows? He could be a continuation of that line of Favre, Rodgers, Love, where they have 45 years of elite quarterback play. But if you look at the fact that 30 years of Favre and Rodgers only got them 2 Super Bowl wins, I think this sort of epitomizes why they only got 2 Super Bowl wins out of Favre and Rodgers, is because they didn't address other needs. I think Jordan Love could be good, and it'll take us about 5 years to evaluate this pick. But I think they also could have taken a need at this position. They could have taken Patrick Queen. They need middle linebacker. I do like how they addressed it later with Kamal Martin. I think Kamal Martin could be a huge steal. Mel Kiper Jr. had him as the number 3 inside linebacker prior to injury. But I think taking Jordan Love here is very much, I mean, it's a move saying we don't think we're a Super Bowl contender. We think we're a team that's rebuilding for 5 years down the road. And I don't think, looking at Green Bay's roster, I don't think that's where Green Bay is. I think Green Bay is where they should be taking guys that'll be impacts right now. They should be taking guys who will be playing on the field in a Super Bowl run in 2020, 2021, not guys who will be sitting on the bench holding the clipboard in 2020, 2021.
Nick, how do you feel about this pick for the Packers?
Well, first off, Green Bay had the worst draft of any team. There's no doubt about it. Taking Jordan Love is one thing. Training up for him is a whole other thing. So that's a no-no and another no-no. Now, if he ends up being the next Aaron Rodgers and a Hall of Famer, then this will pan out. But that is the only way this will pan out. So I guess we'll never know if this was a good pick until we see how Jordan Love was. But as of now, this is an absolutely awful pick. You just went 13-3. Now, granted, I think it was a little bit lucky 13-3. You just went 13-3 and we're in the NFC Championship game. You're one win away from the Super Bowl. You should be in win it now mode, helping out Aaron Rodgers to win it now. Wide receiver was by far easily their biggest need. But they also lost Bulaga. As Kayla mentioned, you could have used a middle linebacker. You could have gone so many directions here. And they decided to take quarterback and trade up for one. And then their next pick to take a running back, which was almost as bad of a pick. This makes absolutely no sense. This was terrible. I think I'd call Doetkott and say, pack your bags, you're gone. I'm sorry, you're done. This was an awful pick. There's no way around it. And the next pick was
also the entire state of Wisconsin, since you're the owners of the Packers, if anyone in the entire state of Wisconsin is listening to this, I'm willing to relocate to Green Bay for a job. If you want to get rid of Doetkott and bring in a guy who would have taken, Patrick Queen, possibly the top inside linebacker prospect in the draft when you guys needed an inside linebacker, feel free to reach out to me. My Twitter handle is @CalebSipe36. I'm open to being the GM of the Packers. I can't do worse than Doetkott did in this draft.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% with you guys. Number one, if you're trading up in the draft, typically it's because you really want a guy at a position of need. Okay,
and typically it is a quarterback.
Which typically, yeah, sure, could be a quarterback, but you have Aaron Rodgers. You obviously don't need a quarterback. Like you guys have said, one game away from making the Super Bowl. Okay, they played not very well in that 49ers game. Big reason why is because their defense was horrendous. Now, granted, Devontae Adams was about the only guy that Rodgers had to throw to, so another wide receiver certainly could have helped here too. I had them getting Laviska Shenault at their 30th pick, so not at 26 where they ended up trading to. Jordan Love, I think, was a terrible pick. I am not at all, even slightly, a fan of Jordan Love. The guy threw 17 interceptions his last year in the Mountain West Conference. Once all of his good players left, he got exposed. He wasn't a very good quarterback. The guy has character issues. He puts down the other team. He's extremely arrogant guy. Some off-field stuff regarding, the marijuana, smoking marijuana a week before his.
Hey, you can't get suspended for that anymore. It's okay to smoke weed in the NFL.
And you can't. That's fair, but as far as college athletics go, it's still something that they don't want you to do. Multiple times. It's just a joke of a pick. I think even if they would have, I was going to trash this pick regardless if they got a quarterback. The fact that they went with Jordan Love makes it 1,000 times worse that's the quarterback that they even went with. But anyways, thank you for listening to my TED Talk. We can move on to the next pick now.
Whoa.
Did I tear them apart enough, Nick, or no?
Wow. Lucas Dorton has spoken. Oh, my. Jordan Love will not be a subscriber to us anytime soon.
Well, that's fine. I don't care. Maybe in 5 years when we'll actually see him take the field, we'll see how he does.
Brad and I up in Jordan Love. They're going to be the next Moss and Brady, and then they're going to come on this podcast. I'm going to invite them, and they're going to show you guys up.
They can take my spot if they become the next Moss and Brady. I would never do another podcast again.
See, 5 years from now, we're going to be bigger than Moss and Brady, and so they'll be asking to come on our show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Your show. Yeah.
But anyways, we will move on. Pick number 27 was the Seattle Seahawks. They went with Jordan Brooks here. Caleb, I'll start with you on this one. I certainly did not see them going this player. I think defense was a position that they should have gone. However, I'm not sure this is the guy they should have gone with.
I agree with you, and here's why. They have Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Bruce Irvin, Shaquem Griffin. That's a fairly solid linebacking core. Taking a middle linebacker from Texas Tech and Jordan Brooks was not the big need. They could have gone safety. Grant Delpit was still available. They already have, let me see. They have one safety in Quandre Diggs. That's a good safety. They could have gone corner. Really, the only very good corner they have is Shaquille Griffin. They could have gone anything in the secondary, and that would have filled a need. When you're looking at a draft that still has Grant Delpit, Jeff Gladney, Noah Igbenogany, I'm just kidding about that one. Xavier McKinney was still available. If you compare Xavier McKinney and Quandre Diggs, that safety duo becomes very good. Or if you take Grant Delpit, or if you take Antoine Winfield Jr., or if you take Jalen Johnson or Trevon Diggs, there are so many pieces still available in the secondary that you could have taken one of those guys instead of bringing a guy into a crowded linebacker room. It was a weird pick in that it didn't go to a position of need, and that it wasn't the highest rated player at that position. We'll get to Patrick Queen with the next pick. Patrick Queen was still available on the board, who the debate was, is Patrick Queen or Kenneth Murray your top linebacker? Jordan Brooks wasn't in that conversation, and they went with Jordan Brooks. So I'll trust Seattle, but I question it.
Nick, how do you feel about this pick for the Seahawks at 27?
I thought this was an awful pick. I think the 4 worst picks in the first round were right towards the end. I was almost positive this was going to be Epinesa, and it wasn't, which turns out he really slid. So they passed on him twice, actually. So considering some of the guys I thought they should have taken here ended up slipping and going like into the 50s, it's not as bad of a pick, but I still thought, Patrick Queen was probably the better linebacker, although like I'm just looking on ESPN.com and it lists Jordan Brooks as outside linebacker and Patrick Queen as inside linebacker. So, I mean, I guess they play a little different, but I just figured there was many other guys you could have taken here, like pretty much like Caleb mentioned. You could have taken some safeties. You could have taken Yetur Gross-Matos or Epinesa. I don't know. I didn't agree with the pick at all.
Ravens at 28 go Patrick Queen, which Caleb kind of talked about him here. But Nick, I'll start with you on this one. I think a lot of people saw Ravens going linebacker here or somewhere on the defense, and you end up going with Patrick Queen. You like this pick for Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore has about as few of needs as anybody in football, but I suppose linebacker is probably the one thing they could definitely use. So I think it's pretty obvious, and Patrick Queen was left, so they took him. I like the pick.
Caleb?
I like the pick too. I agree. They don't have a whole lot of needs, especially just bringing in Calais Campbell. I had them taking Yetur Gross-Matos, but given that they have Calais Campbell, maybe they didn't see that as big of a need. Linebacker, I think they're solid at linebacker, but bringing in Patrick Queen it doesn't hurt your case at all. So it definitely is a good pick for them. I mean, there's not really anything I can pick on. Maybe you go with a wide receiver, since your top wide receivers are Willie Snead and Marquise Brown. But given how deep the wide receiver class was, I give them a pass on that.
I personally think they should should have tried to address wide receiver more than they have been, but nobody seems to think they need wide receivers. I think it's just because Lamar Jackson had such a good year regardless. But I think
I agree. I think they need wide receivers, but they did.
Dangerous.
They did address it. Later in the draft, they did take James Proche from Southern Methodist, who I think is a steal.
In the 6th round. I mean,
yeah, he's
could have got one in the 2nd round instead of J.K. Dobbins when you already got Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, but what position does Lamar Jackson play? He doesn't play running back.
Regardless, he ran for over 1,000 yards. They got Mark Ingram. I would have taken wide receiver over J.K. Dobbins.
Ingram's also 30 years old, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, 29 Tennessee Titans had a pick here. I had them going with Kenneth Murray. They ended up going offensive line with David Wilson. I like this pick. Again, losing Jack Conklin. It's a pretty big hole. So Isaiah Wilson in there for Tennessee. Caleb, you want to start with this?
You know who had him going offensive lineman?
I'm assuming you.
Yep. I had them going with Austin Jackson. Clearly, he went earlier in the draft. But yeah, Isaiah Wilson. It's a good pick for them, especially losing Jack Conklin. Why not get another offensive lineman? There's no quarterback really worth taking there since the Packers were dum-dums and traded up for Jordan Love.
You've got Tannehill. You don't need a quarterback.
Well, that's what I was getting to, and they clearly have some faith in Ryan Tannehill. More faith than I would have, but they gave him a 4-year contract? So, yeah. You might as well protect Tannehill. And they're already solid at wide receiver with AJ Brown and Corey Davis. Corey Davis, a man of my own PJ Fleck.
Roll the boat, Skyuma.
Go Gophers. And they also have Derrick Henry. So offensively, they didn't have any needs. I could have seen them going with a cornerback here. But, obviously I predicted them going with offensive tackle. I think offensive tackle is a good pick for them. I believe they later addressed the corner need. Yep, they did. They took Christian Fulton at number 61. So I like that pick, and I like that they then addressed corner as well. I could have seen them taking maybe Josh Jones. I was higher on Josh Jones than I was on Isaiah Wilson, but if they're high on Isaiah Wilson, good for them. I hope he works out.
Nick, you like this pick for Tennessee?
I do. I had them getting Trayvon Diggs, a cornerback. I thought they needed O-lineman and cornerback. I probably would have addressed cornerback first, but considering Christian Fulton fell to them in the 2nd round and they got Wilson in the 1st round, I'd say it worked out just fine, and they did a very, very good job.
Stellar analysis, Nick. I like it. And so for the Dolphins' 3rd first-round pick, so this is what the Green Bay Packers would have been if they would have picked, but they traded with them. The Dolphins go with the cornerback from Auburn. I'm just going to start off by saying,
There's an awful pick.
I think I didn't think they needed to go corner right now. I think they could have gone potentially running back, gone potentially safety, maybe offensive line too. They could have gone there as well. But they ended up going with the corner. First off, I was not really pleased with this pick at all. I still really am not, but I can understand a little bit why they made the pick. Brian Flores with his defense is a defense at the corners, typically pretty physical, and he really, really likes the press coverage too. And from what I've read from a bunch of different people is that Igbenogany, as far as physical-wise in the press, he is pretty solid at that. But he had only been a cornerback for 2 years up to that point. So I don't know. I think if you go corner here, I think you go Christian Fulton. I think you go Jeff Gladney.
Jalen Johnson.
They did it.
Johnson, yeah, exactly. So there's a few other guys I probably would have taken before him. But Nick, I will let you start with this one. I'm assuming not a huge fan of the Dolphins getting Igbinoghene here.
This was probably one of the worst picks the entire draft. This was an absolutely awful pick, Dorton. I'm sorry. The first 2 picks, good. This one was awful. Now, I have been quoted saying you can never have too many cornerbacks. True. But with that being said, you don't need to take one in the 30th overall when you could have so much more. This is like the Chargers, who have Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram taking a D end here when they could address something else. You just don't do it. You could have had safeties. Literally any safety you wanted, any single one. You could have taken any one. You could have taken the best running back, whichever one you wanted, whichever one. But no, they took cornerback. And if you're going to take cornerback, how about you take like Christian Fulton or Jalen Johnson? You took a guy who literally I didn't even know of.
I agree. I had never heard of him.
And Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson clearly tore him up in the Outback Bowl.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Caleb, what do you have to say?
I'll actually disagree with the comment about Tyler Johnson tearing him apart because he was shadowing Rashad Bateman the whole time. And
I mentioned both names, but
Bateman had like 60 yards in that game. He did
whatever.
okay covering Bateman, and that's why Tyler Johnson went off for 200 yards in the bowl game, which clearly impressed the people there in Tampa. I did not like the pick. Like you mentioned, you could have gone safety. You know, there were the top 3 safeties in the draft there. You had Xavier McKinney.
Yep.
Antoine Winfield Jr., who also put on a show in Tampa, and Grant Delpit. I'm looking at it right now. Their top safety is Bobby McCain from Memphis. He's okay. But if you were to pair him up with any of those 3 guys I just mentioned, that defensive secondary becomes a lot better. I don't know if I necessarily would have gone corner. If I did go corner, I would have gone with somebody else, like a Jalen Johnson, a Jeff Gladney, or Christian Fulton. I do agree with Lucas. As everything sort of settled from the draft, I do feel a little better about them taking Igbinoghene.
You shouldn't.
But they already had Xavier Howard, Byron Jones. He's okay. But why not address wide receiver or offensive line? I do like that they later then went and added Robert Hunt and Solomon Kenley later in the draft. So they pretty much got an entire new offensive line in this draft. They got 3 guys who will probably be starters, which shows how much the Dolphins suck right now.
Dude, I could see the Dolphins winning the division this year.
Well, yeah, I could see anybody winning the division this year, but not if you're taking Noah. I'm going to build an arc in the first round. Hell, with how bad the division is, they could still win it with Noah. I'm going to build an arc. But there are so many more guys that you could have taken. I would have a different corner or a wide receiver. I do like what they did with running back. I'm okay with them not taking a running back there, since they gave a 5th round draft pick to get Matt Breida. Like, good Lord, that's a steal. Yep. And plus they signed Jordan Howard as a free agent. I think that's a decent backfield there in Miami now. Now, given at the time in the first round, they didn't know they were going to get Matt Breida for a 5th.
Right.
They were banking on Jordan Howard and Kalen Ballage as their top 2 running backs. But the fact that they went out and got Matt Breida, I don't think they needed a running back. And especially not there in the first round. I would have taken a different corner, or actually, if I were to pick, I would have gone with one of the top 3 safeties or a different corner.
Yeah. Yep. And I agree. We, at the time, which is one reason why I was very upset, like Caleb mentioned, is because we did not have another running back. We had Jordan Howard. Kalen Ballage was iffy. Howard pretty decent. The fact that we got Breida for a 5th round pick kind of makes this pick a little bit better in regards to now our backfield is pretty set with, Thunder and Lightning, Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. So I'm excited to see how those guys do. We did address safety later on in the draft with getting Brandon Jones for Texas, But my thing is, if you're going to get a safety later on, why didn't you just get one there at 30? Because
why didn't you just take an offensive lineman there, and you still could have got any safety you wanted other than Xavier McKinney at number 39.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
I gotta say something. First off,
yeah,
Miami had a good draft. It's just this pick was awful. The rest were all right. But yes, if you're gonna take a safety later, take one here. And Matt Breida's good. Yeah, the value they got him for was good. But congratulations, you have two running backs who weren't good enough to compete with a bunch of other running backs on their team. So congratulations, you have Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. That's a great backfield. Congratulations.
I think you're underselling.
Congratulations to LSU. They got a quarterback who wasn't able to compete at Ohio State. That really worked out really terrible for LSU.
But
the Niners absolutely destroyed the Vikings with the run game in the playoffs with Mostert and anybody not named Matt Breida. And then Matt Breida came in for whatever reason in like the fourth quarter and just fumbled it and gave it to us. Like, here you go. So congrats. You have Matt Breida.
But did you win? What Super Bowl did the Vikings play in this year?
It doesn't matter. We're talking Matt Breida, not Vikings.
Well, you brought the Vikings into it.
Matt Breida's not the reason we lost.
So moving on to the Vikings pick. Lucas?
Oh, gosh.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's still recording for him. So at number 31, the Vikings, they got the pick from the 49ers. The Vikings went and got Jeff Gladney. I like this pick. I would have maybe rather seen them go Christian Fulton, Jalen Johnson. I would not have wanted them to go Trevon Diggs just because of the bad blood between Stephon and the organization. So I think Gladney was probably, and you could have flipped a coin between any of those three cornerbacks there between Jalen Johnson and what was it? Johnson.
Gladney and Fulton.
Yeah, Johnson, Gladney, and Fulton. Any of those guys, that's a good pick. I like the Gladney pick. I know John Overn, one of the guys that I run MSP Athletics with, he had a highlight reel of all of the players drafted. And one of the hits that Jeff Gladney had, it was like, this guy can stick it to someone. And so I like the Gladney pick. What did you think?
To be honest, I did not know that much about Gladney before the pick, but everything I've heard about him afterwards, it sounds like the dude's just a stud. And to be honest, as long as they took cornerback, I really didn't care. I didn't have a preference. I picked us to take Jalen Johnson, but I honestly didn't have a preference. And it sounds like Gladney's going to be really good. And the fact that he was a cornerback in the Big 12, which is all about offense, specifically passing, and he's excelled in it, is a good sign. So I like the pick. I really like this pick.
Yeah, I had them taking Gladney at number 22. And so the fact that they got him at 31, I think that's a good pick for them. For me, it shows that Lucas is still recording the call. Does it show that for you as well?
Yes, it does.
All right. So I would imagine that he's still getting the footage. Hopefully he joins in the call later. We could move on to pick number 32 and hope that this is still recording. What did you think of Clyde Edwards-Helaire to the Chiefs?
Well, I had them taking running back. I had them taking DeAndre Swift. It seems typical that a running back's taken like with the last pick of the first round. It's kind of common. I thought they either should have gone running back or kind of like a game-changing safety like a Winfield Jr. So I was okay with the running back pick. It's not for me to say which running back should have gone. I mean, I honestly could not tell you. I personally like what I've heard about DeAndre Swift, and I think he would have worked out really well in that offense. But I don't think going with Edwards-Helaire is the wrong pick either. So I like the pick.
I think looking at it, all three of us had the Chiefs taking a running back.
There's just
you had Swift. Lucas had Dobbins. I had Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. I wasn't sold on Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the running back there. I thought it was very clear that there were 3 top running backs in the draft, and we each picked a different top 3 running back to go to the Chiefs. I agree. I could have seen them going with like a playmaking safety. And they're coming off of a Super Bowl championship. They've got a good roster. There's not really any wrong move for them. So if they believe in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, good for them. I hope he works out. I mean, I'm not a Chiefs fan, so I wasn't mad about it. I just didn't like the pick at the time. But really, running backs are a dime a dozen these days.
It's just kind of funny how we each picked a different running back, and it was a different one. It was still a different one.
We each got a half a point.
Right? Yeah.
Did you text Lucas?
I did, but I don't know. I haven't heard back. But whoever the Chiefs were going to take here, it's not like they're going to ask him to be a McCaffrey or an Elliott or a Henry. They're just looking for a guy who can be in there for, half the snaps, catch some passes, keep the ball moving and the chains moving, along with Damian Williams.
Yeah.
So if they like Edwards-Helaire, then good for them.
Yep. I guess while Lucas is still out of the call, we can look at who were some guys that you saw as steals?
Well, I mean, day one, I don't necessarily see many steals come to eye because,
I'd say wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb.
First round. CeeDee Lamb, yes, that would be the main one. The couple that stuck out to me though were in the second round, like Epinesa, Winfield Jr., Josh Jones in the third round were some big ones. But I see CeeDee Lamb is definitely the biggest steal of the first round. I don't know how that can be argued. Oh, and in my opinion, Tristan Wirfs.
Yes. Yeah, I think Tampa Bay had a great draft. I was telling Lucas earlier before we started recording, I think it was while you dipped out to grab some licorice. I said that if lids were an essential business right now, I would currently be wearing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers hat.
Obviously, I'm Viking fan through and through, but I love me some Tom Brady. I was a big Patriots fan, right? Well, then he goes to Tampa, and then he goes with Gronk, who I'm a big Gronk guy. And then they draft Antoine Winfield Jr., and the guy I wanted the Vikings to draft the most, Tyler Johnson. I'm like, really? Tampa Bay is trying to strip my fandom from me. I'm all in on Tampa Bay.
Well, and then they got Tristan Wirfs, too, to add to an offensive line that is not bad.
They took 2 Gophers, a Hawkeye, and a Cornhusker for sure. So they like the Big Ten.
Yeah. I'd say other steals, just like skimming through it, I think the Cowboys got a steal in Trevon Diggs at number 51 overall. I think he was a guy, and also the Bears at number 50. They got Jalen Johnson. I think those are 2 guys who were first-round talent. They just managed to slip out of the first round and into the middle part of the second round. Johnson and Diggs, those are 2 good steals. Like you mentioned, Epinesa to the Bills. I kind of like the Bills draft as well, with them getting Epinesa in the second. And then also later in the draft, they got a guy that I've been pretty high on, Gabriel Davis from UCF. He was the number 1 wide receiver there. I think he'll be able to contribute with the Bills. I think that's a good pick for them. Josh Jones going to the Cardinals. Oh my, what a steal.
I want to know how he fell that far. I have no idea. Like, there was teams who needed O-linemen that passed up on him like 3 times. So I don't know what the deal was with him and how he fell so far, but I don't know. That was an obvious, that was probably the best value pick of the whole draft.
Yeah, whatever caused him to fall, unless it's like a health issue, I think the Cardinals definitely redeemed themselves for not going offensive line with their first pick.
Yes, that's why I said, obviously you're not going wrong with Simmons, but I personally still would have taken O-lineman. But considering they got Josh Jones later, it totally worked out for him.
I think another steal as far as offensive line goes, I don't know if he's a steal as much as a good pick, but the Jaguars in the 4th round, they took Ben Barch, the offensive tackle out of St. John's here in Minnesota. That guy's a big boy. They talked all about the kind of smoothies he'd drink. I thought it sounded kind of disgusting, but the guy's a big guy. And if you're Jacksonville, they didn't take a quarterback until they got Jake Luton. I don't remember if he was a late round pick or if he was undrafted.
So I on Twitter, I don't even remember who it was, but they had a list of the best value pick from each round.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Josh Jones was 3rd round, Ben Barch was 4th round, and Tyler Johnson was 5th round.
Yeah, I think Barch to the Jaguars, that's a good pick for them, especially if they made it clear they're building around Gardner Minshew. I think adding a big offensive tackle definitely helps his case.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I personally think Green Bay had the worst draft. And I do not like Philadelphia's draft either because that hurts pick. But I think for best draft, what would you go with? I think there's a couple options, and I don't think I'm being a homer here because I seen on Twitter they had like 14 different expert grades and compile them all together and see who the average was.
The Vikings were
Minnesota
the top.
ended up being Minnesota was the top, and it wasn't that close. I think the Vikings had a very good draft because I wasn't totally fond of them getting Jefferson right away, but it ended up working out. But see, they addressed need. They got 2 cornerbacks right early on. Dantzler, I seen get taken in the 1st round on some mock drafts. They got him in the 3rd. They also got a 3rd cornerback. So they fixed their one major problem, and depth overall defense because they lost a lot of guys was a problem. Well, they had all sorts of picks, so they fixed that. I think Arizona getting Josh Jones in the 3rd and Isaiah Simmons in the 1st round. I think there's a good argument could be made that they had the best draft. I like Tampa Bay's draft. I'm probably being a little homer there, but I think Winfield Jr. is the perfect thing they needed because their defense right now, if something puts them back, it's their defense, specifically the pass defense. While Antoine Winfield Jr. is kind of a playmaker back there, they just need a guy who's going to, get some interceptions, do some special things on defense. I like that, and I obviously love the Tristan Wirfs pick. And then I think Dallas, we all said we weren't a huge fan of CeeDee Lamb, but at the end of the day, it's a good value pick. And the rest of their draft, I really like what they did. So those would be my winners.
I would say definitely the Vikings. Troy Dye in the 4th round. Oh my, that guy, he can be a starter for them and he can be very good. The one main knock they had against him was his work ethic. But talking with Oregon fans and watching him myself, work ethic was never an issue with this guy. This guy gave 110%, and I think he has a lot of potential. I think he's a great fit for that Vikings defense. I also think it's a great fit that Lucas Dorton is back in the chat.
Technical difficulties, man. You got to love it.
As long as it was still recording, we're good.
Yep, it's still recording.
The Cowboys, you mentioned them getting that pickup with CeeDee Lamb. I briefly alluded to this earlier. The Cowboys got their next center from Wisconsin with the very last pick in the 4th round. Tyler Badash, as late as a month ago.
I believe the last time they drafted the center was they also drafted center Travis Frederick from Wisconsin just a few years back. So.
Yep. Travis Frederick would be my comparison there. Tyler Badash, when I was doing some of my earlier mock drafts, he was a guy who was a late 1st round talent. And so the fact that they got Tyler Badash there at the end of round number 4, I think that's a great draft for the Cowboys. I think the Giants picking up Shane Lemieux in the 5th round, that was also a very good pick. I think Lemieux was one of the better interior offensive linemen. But with Lemieux, he played every position on the offensive line. So I think they're getting a gadget piece that they can move around.
One more thing, by the way, I did not mention, I think another winner and has a good argument for the overall winner is the Jaguars. I loved what they did in the 1st round. CJ Henderson, I mean, you weren't going to get Okuda, so you got the next best thing for cornerback. And then they got Clavon Chason, who's probably one of the better defensive prospects in the whole draft. And then you got Laviska Shenault Jr., which is a dire need in wide receiver, with your 3rd pick. And I had him going in the 1st round. And then they addressed defensive tackle and cornerback again later, and they got Ben Barch, who we discussed. So I really like the Jaguars pick as well.
I think the Bears had a sneaky good pick sitting there in the 5th round at number 163. Kendall Vildor from Georgia Southern. This guy was a lockdown corner. I think that's a great pick for them. I think the Packers didn't redeem themselves until the 5th round. I still
Well,
think
it's still not. It's still a bad draft, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the first starter. I texted one of my friends who's a Packers fan, and I said, Gutekunst does realize he's allowed to draft starters in the draft, right? And I don't think he took a guy who's going to start within the first year or two until the 5th round when he took Kamal Martin. Like, this was a terrible draft, but good for them for getting Kamal Martin.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, other than that, it was terrible. I did like the Broncos draft, building around.
I'm not like I alluded early. I don't mind the Judy pick, but
Yeah,
you did
Hamler
not need
was-
to double down on what you did not need to double down on wide receiver.
You could have got
Especially considering
safety.
I think here I'm going to talk the guy up, and now I can't even think of his name. Cortland Sutton. I clearly think Cortland Sutton's one of the best wide receivers in National Football League. So you already have him and Judy and Noah Fant. You don't need to double down with KJ Hamler when there's plenty other players you could have taken there.
Yeah, there is one guy that I'd like to highlight that not many people are going to think it was a good pick. And the 5th round, Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft selected a very questionable pick. They picked up Justin Rohrwasser, the kicker out of Marshall. And I like that pick. He's solid. He's got some good tattoos. He's got the American flag, and then he's got American flag on one forearm, and on the other forearm he's got liberty or death. And that just, for me, you're the New England Patriots, for God's sakes. You're the Patriots. That guy is the perfect fit there. The reason I mentioned the Broncos a little bit ago was a 6th round pick that I really liked, and that was Netani Muti, a offensive guard from Fresno State. I believe he had the most bench press reps out of offensive linemen.
Set a record, I think.
Yeah, he was good. Injury concerns were a huge issue for him, though. But if he can stay healthy, I like that pick for the Broncos. Yeah. The one guy, so the Eagles, I didn't like their draft originally, but then they got a guy who I believe I predicted. No, I didn't predict him in the 1st round in this mock draft, but I thought Prince Tega Winogo from Auburn, I thought he was a very good steal, taking him towards the end of the 6th round. This guy's a big offensive tackle from Auburn. He was originally a basketball player, so he's an athletic offensive tackle with some size. I like that pick for Philadelphia. I didn't like the Jalen Reagor pick. I kind of like the Jalen Hurts pick. I think he has a chance to play right away just because of Carson Wentz's injury history. I think there's a very good chance that we see Jalen Hurts appear in 4 or 5 games as a rookie.
I have a feeling they're going to try to use him as a wide receiver and whatnot until they need to use him as a quarterback. Otherwise, I don't see why they would have taken him so early.
Kind of like a why is the name escaping me right now? Saints, BYU. The Saints quarterback, Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill. Yeah.
Yes. I think the Chargers also got a
big extension.
Yeah, 2 years, $21 million. That's big for him. I was just looking at it, and in the 7th round, I like the Chargers pick. I would have thought they would have gone wide receiver a little earlier, but they got a very good value pick with KJ Hill, the wide receiver at Ohio State, in the 7th round. I remember watching the draft and sitting there like, why is KJ Hill falling? This guy's a productive guy out of Ohio State. I think they got a very good pick there. Other than that, not really seeing many other. I'm just scrolling through. I like the Nate Stanley pick for Minnesota. There's no pressure on him there. It's a good fit. I could see him being a good understudy for Kirk Cousins. Other than that, that was all I had for the draft. There were some undrafted guys that I'd highlight, but do you have anything else on the draft?
I was happy to see 5 Gophers got taken.
Yes.
Which is, by the way, 2 by Tampa and 2 by the Giants. So
that means we got 3 guys in the Big Apple.
Their teammates.
Yeah.
And Coughlin slipped a lot, by the way. Coughlin was really slipped.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at how far Coughlin fell, but I did like where he ended up. I think he has a chance. That's probably one of the better chances for him to be a competitor right away. I think that's a good fit there. Do you have anything left for the draft, or do you want to move on to like undrafted guys?
You go ahead and do the undrafted guys, and then I will give my best to close this out like Dorton does.
Okay. So for undrafted guys, I'm just scrolling through the list of guys. A couple guys that stuck out to me. Rodney Smith, I was happy he got a chance. He signed with the Panthers. I don't know how much he can do. He's for a rookie, he's an older rookie. And at running back, it just doesn't bode well for him. And he'll be struggling to get any sort of looks when they already have Christian McCaffrey. But I'm happy that he got an opportunity. I did like Sam Renner going to the Rams. I
didn't even realize that.
Yeah, Renner's with the Rams. I think that's a good opportunity for him. There's absolutely no pressure for him to perform because they have Aaron Donald there, obviously. I think that gives him a chance to sit there, learn, and then potentially become a solid defensive tackle in the National Football League. I really like that fit for him. But so far, that's all I've seen for Gophers as undrafted free agents. I was a little surprised that Thomas Barber hasn't been signed yet. At least
I
as
can't believe Thaddeus Moss wasn't drafted.
That surprised me too. I hope he does well with the Redskins.
They could use him. Jordan Reed plays about 1 game and then he's done for the year.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. Other than that, I believe Nate Evans, the linebacker from UCF, signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I like that. He's a solid linebacker. He'll probably end up on the practice squad there. I mean, that's the way it is with a lot of these undrafted guys. Hey, I see you're on Twitter and just retweeted Sidelines University of Minnesota tweet.
Well, I'm making sure I got Dorton's Twitter handle, but it's pretty simple.
Also for UCF, Adrian Killins, the running back, he signed with the Eagles. He's a very fast guy. He could contribute as a special teams player. I'd be interested to see how he fits in with the Eagles. He reminds me a little bit of like a Darren Sproles type running back who, I don't know if he's still on the roster. If he is, he's probably in his last year. Sproles is really old. I could see Killins contributing as a receiver out of the backfield. If you get the ball to Killins on a screen, he can take off real fast. This guy was very, very fast. And you can get him in the return game as well. Other than that, I'm scrolling through, and I mean, undrafted guys are usually undrafted guys for a reason. The Vikings also took a guy out of UCF, Neville Clark. He's a pretty good corner. They pair him up with his former teammate, Mike Hughes. So that's a good opportunity for him to learn, like on the practice squad, maybe contribute as a special teamer. David Moa, that was a very interesting one for the Vikings. I believe, like a way too early mock draft a year or so ago, David Moa was a big defensive tackle prospect. He's a big guy. It'll be interesting to see what Zimmer can do with him. Other than that, I think that's... Calvin Throckmorton to the Saints, offensive lineman from Oregon. We'll see how that pans out. He has the potential to be pretty good. Yeah, that's all I got for the draft.
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't have anything to add with undrafted free agents. So I'm happy the way it ended up. I really like the Vikings draft. I wanted Tyler Johnson really, really bad. I didn't think we'd get him. But I'm glad he's in Tampa going to catch passes from Brady now. So I'm happy with that.
Boy.
But anyway, I suppose we should probably end this now.
Yep.
So thanks for joining once again. Clearly, you know way more about this than I do, so I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure.
So Dorton's not here. He had technical difficulties. So once again, thanks for watching, everybody. This was a long episode, I know that, but it's well worth the watch. And so please share this and the Twitter handles now. So you want to give out your Twitter handle?
Yep. So there are multiple places you can reach me. I'll just throw all of them out there. The number one source would probably be at Caleb Sipe 36. That's CALEBSIPE 36. That'll get you sort of the most diverse sporting image, I guess. That's the one where I put everything out there from every school that I follow. Otherwise, you can follow me and a couple other guys at MSP Athletics. I'm also available at Sidelines UMN. And if for some reason there's anybody on here who's a Central Florida fan, somehow I got roped into running the Sidelines UCF account. So that is at Sidelines_UCF.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you're a Knights fan, go ahead and follow them. Otherwise, that's all I've got. Row the boat, Skyma, and go Gophers.
Yes, go Gophers. And then Dorton is at Lucas_Dorton. That's capital L, capital D. Dorton is DORTON. And I am at Doetkott or Doetkott, if that's easier to remember. DOETKOTT. So thank you all, and tune in next week.
And we are out.
Out.